All right, so welcome back to Safety Beyond Compliance, your podcast about safety innovation, safety tech, the platform for global safety leaders to be heard, to be seen, and to talk about leadership and also impact. We are back after a short break of a few weeks, and we are starting a new series about Safety 4.0. And we are doing it because it became mainstream globally. Everyone is talking about AI and safety tech and other emerging technologies. My name is Lucas. I am your host. I'm the founder of Shield360. And today I have a very special uh, guest with me, someone that you probably know, but you probably haven't heard yet. This person, this special person, talking about this topic so far. But before we get started, so you don't miss any episodes of this series, I just would like to invite you to scan this QR code so you can join the channel so you never miss an update about safety beyond compliance. So up till now, we've heard from CEOs, innovators, and founders, the ones that are creating the tools that we are using. But today, we are shifting this conversation and we are going to start talking with people that are representing our profession. So, my guest today is someone who brings not just credibility, but a fresh perspective on risk management and thought leadership. I would like to welcome to the podcast today Rosie Russell, the president of the International Institute of Safety and Risk Management. So, Rosie, it's great to have you here with us and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Thanks for inviting me along.
It's a pleasure. So, how are you doing, Rosie? All good?
It's a good day. I'm just back off holiday, so getting back into the swing of things in the day job.
Amazing, amazing. So, I hope you had a very good holiday, recharged the batteries, and feeling fresh to start all over again. I'm sure you're busy. I was telling you just before we started that I've seen you recently everywhere: podcasts, webinars, international events, and conferences. So, how do you find time for everything?
I think, to be honest, when you are taking on a presidential role, you're taking on a second full-time job. The
True.
main thing that I've had to do is try and do as much as I can at evenings and weekends, but yeah, it's also using some of your own holiday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because everything is about AI nowadays, I need to double check that I'm speaking with the real Rosie and not an AI avatar. Because, as I said, with your role and being everywhere, I have to double check. But I'm pretty sure you're the real Rosie, right?
I wouldn't clone myself. I wouldn't do that to the rest of the world. I mean, I'm of an age that I remember on one of the comedy shows, Max Headroom, which will date me terribly, but some of the audience will remember.
Yeah, absolutely, Rosie. So we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about today: risk management, technology, AI, and other interesting subjects. But before we dive into this topic, I would like to go and talk a little bit about yourself behind the title, behind the Rosie that we are used to talk with, representing this amazing institute that it's really a change maker globally. So, so who is Rosie behind the role, behind the title?
Oh, Rosie is really just this kid from the north of Scotland who thinks that a good evening is sat down with a book and maybe a glass of whiskey, but um, I started out life intending to become a chemistry teacher.
Oh, interesting. And
And
how did you become a health and safety and risk management professional in this case? What's the story behind that?
I think I'm going to say entirely by accident, which would be a very safety-centric joke, but in my case would be entirely apt. Uh, I met my wife at university. She was studying risk and safety management. She ultimately chose not to go into that profession, but it certainly piqued my interest. It was interesting to me. And then when I was in the laboratory as an organic chemist, I actually had a reaction that went, well, more exuberantly than intended. That's my code for saying I had an explosion and my head was in the way. So that was 4 nights in hospital and
Oh,
months off work. But it certainly taught me the value of well-considered risk assessment.
absolutely.
And if we scroll forward a couple of years, I then started working for a very small startup, a spin out of Napier University. And my boss, in his fit of wisdom, turned around and said, your wife used to do health and safety, didn't she? Yes, says I am. You can do it for us then. And there's just that kind of glitch in the matrix moment where you go, she did civil engineering. This is chemistry. But my interest was already peaked. The opportunity was there. And in a very small startup, especially when you're one of the first 4 employees, you wear many hats. So I got on with it. What I actually found was that I was far better at the organization and risk management of science than I was at the science itself.
That's really interesting, Rosie, and thanks for sharing this personal story with us. I'm not sure if many people know about that, but it's interesting to know because it gives it shows that you have a purpose. You're not just here because of a career. It has something behind that is still motivates you to change and to drive positive impacts around the world in our profession. So thanks for sharing that for sure.
I mean, this was never my intention. It's a vocation, and I think we all say this is a vocation, but it's kind of something I stumbled across, and it just stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward, you then became this global safety leader, and eventually you become the president of the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management. So how did that happen?
Well, I mean, as many safety professionals, when you're early in your career, you join up with professional organizations as a way to network. And I joined several. Um, IIRSM was one of them. ISTR, which uh, IIRSM just signed a memorandum of understanding with, was another. IOS was another. Um, but IIRSM just felt a bit different to me.
Mm-hmm.
The people who were members of that, they represented lots of different professions, lots of different fields. They had this specialist member category that started to pull in things like chemical engineers and HR people, and you start talking to them, and you realize actually we're all managing occupational risk. It's just coming at it from a slightly different point of view. And that to me kind of made sense that you've all got to cooperate across a business to manage risk, to make sure that none of the business risk that is being managed becomes a people risk. It might not be immediately obvious to some people that an HR manager would be a risk manager. But
Yeah.
if you think about management policies and procedures, recruitment procedures, all of these, if not done right, can become a people risk quite quickly. And also from a health and safety point of view, we're used to working with HR, working with occupational health, working with process safety. And finding that IIRSM was this broad church, I think appealed to me. And also as someone who likes to poke the bear a little bit and ask why maybe a little too often, they were quite happy to welcome in a bit of a maverick.
Wow. Wow, that's really interesting. Let me ask you something right now, very quickly. So I'm pretty sure that most of safety professionals, risk professionals, they are familiar with the IIRSM. But for those who aren't, how do you define this organization and why it's so important?
So we're about 7,000 or so members across 90 countries
Wow.
and across dozens of professions. We're not big, but we make no bones about that, but we think differently. Rather than, shall we say, the traditional view of safety, which is, workplace hazards, a worker, the interaction. We like to take a step back from that and say that happens in the context of an organization, that happens in the context of a function. What else is happening around that risk interaction that could be affecting that? How else can we, well, to coin, I guess, from this podcast, how do we move beyond compliance? How do we actually see the risks that aren't mandated? How do we make sure that things knit together? What's coming down the road? What's next? What have we not seen that's coming to haunt us? And if you take a look at the IIRSM magazine, The Sentinel, it's full of that kind of thinking. For instance, there was an article relatively recently on human factors, which most safety professionals are pretty familiar with. We use that all the time in investigations. But this was about using human factors in risk assessment. How can you use it before the accident happens? And that for me is kind of standing on your head. But when you actually start to look at it, you can see, well, yeah, critical step analysis, situational awareness. Basically, can you do a human hazard? And the answer is yes, you can.
Well, I was expecting a very interesting and robust answer, but you really explain it. It's in a way that even people that are not in this field can understand the importance of risk management in all walks of life. You don't have to work in a manufacturing facility or in a hazardous environment to be responsible or to get involved with the risk assessment. We are exposed to risks on a daily basis, right? And as you were telling me that you are approaching the end of your presidency, which is a shame. You're making such a positive impact in the field, but I'm glad to know that you're going to stay as a co-president, right, for one more year.
That's right. We do a 3-year term, so you start as co-president, which is really good because it allows you to learn the role, find your feet as a president, find out what message it is that you're most passionate about. What is it that you're going to use your time for? You've then got those 12 months where you are the president.
Very intense.
And yes, it's exceedingly intense. I nothing prepares you for that. But you then get 12 months after that to help the new president find their feet, but also to finish off things you've been working on, maybe hand over relationships that you've built, conferences that you've signed up for. And I guess it allows you to blend a little bit into the background, but over time, there's no kind of cliff edge.
Yeah, I think that's 12 months goes really fast. When you're getting really, when you start warming up, you put your strategy in place and you start to deliver, and then it goes 6 months. And then when you start seeing the results, it's done, right? So this approach, it's really interesting. And as a president, what has been your main priority of your presidency term?
Well, I have to say it's the members.
Okay.
We are a membership organization first and foremost. My motto is for the members, by the members. That's how we have to operate, and it's how any membership organization should operate.
That's really interesting, Rosie, because I am a member of a few organizations. I will not name them, but in some, I feel that they are more interested in the membership fee rather than the membership value, right? I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with what I'm saying right now.
I am absolutely familiar with what you're saying, and the membership fee is important. Of course, it is. It's what turns the wheels and allows us to employ corporate staff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what are you getting back for that?
How do we translate this into value for the members, right?
And that's where I think IIRSM does a uniquely good job, because we focus so much on the thought leadership, on getting interesting people to share their experience, getting interesting people to do podcasts, to write articles. We've behind the scenes got a huge number of benefits in terms of things like training, mentorship, the committee structure, and being able to get involved in that. So the IIRSM Ambassadors Network, for instance, a really nice tight-knit group of, again, senior professionals who share learning and are really helping us share technical thinking. We've got the corporates network, where we bring together, each time we have a corporates meeting, 20 or 30 senior leaders from business to answer a few questions. So it's that kind of think tank, and that again then helps feed our thinking. It makes sure that we're not static.
Yeah.
And because we're small, perhaps we're a little easier to contact. You can pick up the phone and speak to the membership officer, no problem whatsoever. You know, people will contact me directly on LinkedIn. Because we're not huge, I've got the time to interact.
Yeah, and I can definitely say, if you're listening to us right now or watching us right now, that's facts, because I reach out to Rosie a few times via LinkedIn, and here we are having this conversation. So she's really approachable, and she's not like in a pedestal. Yes, she's the president of this important organization, but she really takes time to speak with people. So she's very human in that regard, and supporting not only senior leaders, but also the ones who are starting today, and also they will be the leaders of the future. So thanks a lot for sharing that. And it's really important, this care that you have with the members, Rosie. So I put here on the screen the web address of the IIRSM in case you are not yet familiar. Please take time to review it. Before we jump into the next topic, Rosie, I just would like to ask, how do you want to be remembered when your presidency is that's the end? You're going to focus on something else. So how do you want people to remember Rosie, the president of the IIRSM? That's a very philosophical question, right?
It is. But we have the president's reception every year, and it's for the president to pick a topic. You get 2 receptions before you then hand off to your next co-president. So last year, we did that on the topic of inclusive PPE. And of course, this year we see that there was a British standard published on inclusive PPE. And I'd like to think that I was part of that discussion that helped move things forward. And certainly you see LinkedIn now, there's lots and lots of discussion now about the different shapes and sizes of PPE that are coming available. And that's wonderful to see. The other thing is, I was on the drafting panel for British Standard 30480, which will be published very soon, weeks, not months. And that's suicide in the workplace. And that's a suicide prevention standard. And whilst it's a British standard, it will be internationally applicable. But also, it will be one of the very few free standards. You will not have to pay for this. You'll be able to download this free of charge. And I put many days of my own time into the drafting panel there, because I have personal lived experience that's relevant. So I was there from a risk management point of view as the president of IIRSM, but I was also there as a survivor of suicide. So without getting in too deep, that was a long time ago, and I'm in a very different place and a very different person now, but I was able to bring my risk management expertise and my own personal lived experience to bear on a standard. And we had one of the kind of pre-launch events at the President's reception 2 weeks ago, where we were speaking to about 100 risk leaders about this standard, and the appetite for this was palpable. The room was buzzing, yet we were talking about a potentially taboo subject. So if I was to be remembered for one thing, it would be challenging the status quo and moving the conversation on.
That's a very good way to be remembered, Rosie, and thanks for that. So if you're watching us right now, and if you want to ask a question to Rosie, feel free to ask your question, and then at the end of this podcast, I'm going to ask those questions to Rosie. So please, let's make it dynamic. And I'm sure that throughout this episode, you'll have loads of things around your head, and Rosie and I will be very happy to reply, to answer. So it takes us to the core topic of this conversation. And to get started, I would like to ask you how the Institute see emerging technologies, AI, and other interesting approaches to health and safety and risk management in today's world. Everything is changing really fast. It's really difficult to catch up. So what's the point of view of the Institute and the leadership about that? And has it been translated into action so far?
So AI it's a truly exciting development, the speed that things are going at the moment. But I will take a view on it as any other risk professional, that there are risks and opportunities here. For me, the single biggest risk is the lack of familiarity with the technology. It's moving so fast. And especially companies, they're not getting ahead of it. The problem is here that your employees are going to be using various forms of AI, whether you expect them to or not. So companies need to get ahead of it and either provide the tools, provide policies, provide training. That's very much lacking. But at the same time, the different forms of AI that are out there that, for instance, allow us to analyze where people are in a hazardous environment, or perhaps look at ergonomics and provide proactive suggestions. Even analyzing voice and looking for signs of fatigue so that you can actually divert someone from putting themselves in harm's way when they're tired. These are potentially game-changing opportunities because they can allow us to be somewhere we wouldn't be, and allow us to extend ourselves and multiply ourselves as risk professionals. So I think there are some huge risks, but I think there are some equally huge opportunities.
Sorry, I was on mute. So I totally agree with you. It's much more about identifying the use case of AI and the suitability of that particular tool than jumping the first flashy new tool that nowadays it becomes so accessible. I remember just post-pandemic, people were starting to play with ChatGPT, for example. And nowadays there are several LLMs available for everyone, and also very low cost, if not to say most of they are free. And still, when it comes to health and safety and risk management, people were not prepared for that. Yet, things are moving really, really fast. And that leads me to another question, Rosie. How do you see the role of professional bodies and organizations like, for example, IOSH or the IIRSM, ROSPA, in terms of this shift? What organizations like yours needs to do to support with this, first of all, this skills gap? Because in my experience, and I've been working with lots of professionals and companies, people really struggle to do the basics, for example, to prompt and to give a command to an LLM, ChatGPT or whatever, and get the outcome that they are looking for to really augment their capability, not replace anything else. People will say, well, AI will replace us, and that's something that we're going to discuss. But I think that's we are just in the beginning of the journey, and I see that organizations like yours is so important to support the training skills and ensuring that we are preparing leaders to become digitally enabled. So how do you see organizations addressing this issue?
Well, in terms of membership organizations, most of us have competency frameworks. So when it comes to be reviewing those, we're going to have to be including emerging tech as a key competency for the profession. But then how do you get competent on this? Well, then there's learning. And like, again, a lot of other membership organizations, we provide training, whether that be a formal certificated course or whether that be through webinars that we do through the branch network. We have got an opportunity to really communicate with our membership and the wider risk community. So we really need to be using that and getting ahead. Also, we have, for instance, a memorandum of understanding with NEBOSH. So do we need to be working with them and saying, look, this is an emerging field. You need to be getting ahead of this and getting some of this in some of your courses. Because like I say, people are going to be using this tech, whether we want them to or not.
I couldn't agree more. And the problem, in my view, Rose, is that when we get our diplomas or certification, it's not part of the curriculum of these schools how to teach us, because everything is so new. And I'm not blaming the organizations because things are happening right now, but I think that the curriculum of these courses needs to evolve to encompass safety tech, AI, and other things. I like to say to help us become safety 4.0 leaders, because that's the change, that's the shift. I was reading a few months ago the Future of Job report by the World Economic Forum, and then between 2025 and 2030, the skills are really shifting. The skills that will be at the top of the list, of course, is how to use AI, how to interpret data. So it's, in my view, critically important to close this gap, and I see organizations like yours having a huge role to address.
But let's not lose sight of the fact these are additional skills that are coming into the workplace.
Absolutely, and I'm going to touch on that. Yeah,
traditional skills are still valuable. It's like, for instance,
absolutely.
people say, oh, in the UK, we're not a manufacturing economy anymore. We've lost all of this. There are just as many people in manufacturing in the UK as there were in 1974 when the Health and Safety at Work Act came in.
No, I couldn't agree more. And by all means, these are add-ons to the toolkit, in my view. Our ability and skills to influence people, storytelling, do investigations, and everything else, will still be critically important in our profession. That's why I always emphasize that there is no issue about safety professionals being replaced by AI. I don't see that AI will replace our abilities to coach, to have face-to-face conversations, and to influence. Instead of AI can learn all procedures in the world, but AI cannot touch people's hearts and influence them to work safely, right?
And this is an area that worries me, because you hear about some people saying, oh, they have a relationship with their AI chatbot and they've given us a name and things like that. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't. It's a predictive language model that is responding to what it's to what you think you need based on your prompts. Don't get me wrong, some of the answers I've had from the likes of ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot have made me chuckle. So it's certainly, at some level, the predictive language model has captured the human sense of humor.
Indeed.
But it's not real. And for me, this is really important, is that AI can augment the skills that we already have. Unless you are deeply knowledgeable already and can assess what comes out of likes of an LLM, or even, machine learning, or, some of these surveillance types, AI applications, unless you're capable of assessing the output of that, then you shouldn't be using it. I said there are really 4 things that I've come up with so far that I think that AI cannot yet replace. And start with that's human creativity. We make random connections. And, for example, I gave a presentation in Berlin earlier in the year, taking a look at equality, diversity, inclusion characteristics and their relationship to safety outcomes. That was me being creative. I was going, I wonder, but then curious enough. The human curiosity cannot be replaced. And then I went and spent quite a bit of time satisfying my curiosity. Also, critical thinking. Can you assess what it's saying? Is it true? But also empathy, our compassion. So I say creativity, curiosity, critical thinking, and compassion. These are things that you cannot yet synthesize.
I totally agree with you, Rosie. And the problem is that most of people, including people in our own profession, they do not understand how AI works. They think that, oh, if I type this, I will get a procedure or a policy. That's like magic. It's important to understand where this information is coming from and how it works. So just to contextualize, most of the information that we see in these large language models, they come from internet, they come from Wikipedia, they come from blogs, they come from vlogs, it comes from even social media. And AI and machine learning, it's really smart in a way to put it together and predict the next words that will make sense. And when you read it, you feel like, well, that's the answer I was looking for. Especially for those starting this profession right now, it's critically important that they do not take this as the absolute truth. And as I said, you need to use your critical thinking to interpret that information, that outcome. And learning how to prompt, to give the right command, makes a huge difference.
And pressing it on the source of its data. So where I have found it particularly useful is starting a literature search. What is the state of knowledge on a particular subject? Okay, so I used it to help myself prepare for the talk that I gave in Berlin. It gave me about 25, 30 references that I could start reading, but I then cascaded from there on my own. I found things that it did not suggest. I spoke to colleagues, risk management experts in their own field. I used my own connections. So I think whilst it was useful to get started, it was 15% of the data that I actually landed up considering.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when you investigate, when you try to access that source, it's non-existent. And it's important not only to know how to prompt, as I said, and there's a framework that I use for this. You give AI a role, you set the context, you set the expectations about the formats of the answer you're looking for, and then at the end, you have to do exactly what you said, to interpret that information and use your toolkit to make the decision whether this could be used or not. So you have to filter. I was impressed by this research that I read the other day about the readiness of EHS professionals when it comes to use AI. And they interviewed 162 EHS professionals, and 25% of them reported that they have no skills whatsoever. And 61% of them said that they consider themselves as being a beginner, yet most of them are using AI in some way. So that's the skill shift that I was talking about. And to add on top of that, Rosie, it's interesting to know that 49% of EHS functions globally plan to invest in AI in the next 12 months or so. And also recruiters say that they are, to some extent, of course, looking for professionals in our field that possess such skills. That's why I said it's so important that we have this conversation, that we make it mainstream, but also we need to separate what's a fact and what is a myth.
Mm.
And we're doing exactly.
So based on that data, only 14% of our profession reckon they're competent with AI. Now, I'd say it's probably less than that because the field's moving so fast and we tend to overestimate our competence anyway.
Yeah.
So your 61% that are beginners, I'm definitely in that group. But, I'm an enthusiastic beginner and I'm a quick learner.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, you just self-declared as a beginner, and that's absolutely fine. And some people say, well, I should not say that I know nothing about it or that I'm just a beginner, and there's no problem whatsoever about that. The problem is use this powerful tool without knowing the controls that it requires to prevent hallucinations or bias and other stuff. Let me ask you a quick question now, Rosie. You said that you use AI. What do you use AI for most of the time? Is it for doing research, or what are the use cases that you recommend and the use cases that you say, well, this is not a good idea yet to use AI?
So a recent case where I used it was for a hazardous area classification. I needed to understand the impacts of a flammable liquid spill in a confined space. Now, sitting to my left, I have all of the information that I need to sit down and do that. I reckon it'd probably take me about half a day to labor through it because it's not something I do routinely. But I've got enough experience to know that the answer was likely to be a fairly small spill. So I gave, it was Microsoft Copilot, all of the parameters and asked it to make sure it gave me detailed workings that I was then able to follow through. And it gave me an answer that was quite a small number. So it kind of validated my thinking. And I was able to go through it and check through and go, yeah, but this makes sense to me. I can use this. And just as a quick sense check to say what you're proposing to do is going to be inherently hazardous. And that saved me a lot of time. Rather than half a day, it was 10 minutes. I also used it to summarize free text feedback from a survey that I'd done. Now, I had read all the responses, and I'm perfectly capable of sitting down and doing a thematic analysis on, free text responses. It'd take me a few days, probably. But, I've done it when I was doing research in my master's degree. Not a problem. Microsoft Copilot, 2 minutes. And I was then able to interrogate that and dive deeper into it. Now, bear in mind, I had read all of the data. So I was able to sense check and use my critical thinking and say, actually, what's coming out of this looks, well, pretty sensible. So I've used it for things where it's a time saver. As I said, I also used it to kick off research and was, able to perhaps get a jump start on researching a topic that might have taken me, half a day in the computer, in front of the computer to get where I was inside 5 or 10 minutes working with an AI agent.
That's a very interesting use case, like a save time, so you can focus on things that are more important rather than just doing like a massive research. And AI is really good on that. The other thing that you said that makes sense to me is when you want to interrogate a large set of data, instead of you using your time or other skills, you can throw the information into the LLM, and it will organize the data for you and give you trends. And this is really, really, really interesting. But Rosie, there's something I would like to ask you, and something that I'm sure you have to answer all the time, but I must ask you this. So we know the importance of risk assessments and method statements. Okay, there are many ways of risk management out there: process safety, occupational health and safety. There are many things, but I would like to focus on RAMs because that's something that everyone will understand. Nowadays, there is a problem that is becoming so big, a huge document, pages and pages and pages, sometimes copy and paste, becomes a fake documentation for you to go through. And we know that, especially in some industry, things are very dynamic and agile. So the problem is that in some circumstances, it became like a tick box exercise, or something that people do just to protect themselves against legal liability, things like that. Do you think that AI will help solve this issue at some point, to address the problems that we have when it comes to RAMs? We are not yet there, but do you believe that this is something that will come at some point? Do you feel we should have this expectation, or not yet?
It's already happening. People are already using AI to write the RAMs. And people are already using AI to interpret RAMs that they've received. So we're now in a situation where someone has sat at a computer and used AI to write some RAMs, have sent them off to someone who've then fed it into AI to say, are these good enough? So it's marking its own homework. And unless your RAMs are site-specific and have been walked down, how do you know they're good enough? Really, human eyeball Mark 1, human brain Mark 1, still the best tools that we have. Yes, absolutely, it's going to be used. But we need to get back to the fundamental of, would you be capable of writing the document in the first place?
Yeah,
if not,
because if
why
not,
are you using AI?
Absolutely. Why are not spending time to learn how to do it properly, and to try to develop more innovative ways that potentially not AI included, to make it, let's say, more, let's say, easier to digest information. You know what I mean?
And that's the other thing you said. Some of these RAMs are quite big. Well, who reads them?
True.
I mean, honestly, who reads them? Some of the best RAMs that I have seen have just been a few pages. They've been really well considered. They've given a breakdown of the tasks that someone's going to do. They have given a good consideration of the risks and the control measures that are required. And more to the point, is paid good attention to the competency of the people doing it. And I've seen that for some electrical works that I was involved in, and I received a RAMS that was about 6 pages in total. And I thought, do you know what? I could hand this to my 16-year-old niece and she would understand it. That's a good set of RAMs.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, what are the main risks, in your view, involved in using AI prematurely, to issue risk management documentation as RAMs, for example? What are you seeing and what are the issues that people are discussing at your level at the IIRSM currently? Is it like the risk of AI hallucinating and like moving, drifting totally from the core of the task, or is it something else?
It's I would describe it as overreach. It's trying to do something that you're inherently not competent to do. It is I guess, the Rams equivalent of a hold my beer moment. Yeah, of course I can do that. The problem is people's lives are on the risk here. So AI doesn't know what it can't do.
Yeah.
It's got no real world interaction. So it doesn't understand what boundaries it must respect.
Yeah. Yeah. If AI cannot be made accountable, how can we trust AI to make management decisions? So yeah, I think it's a good way to summarize what we just said, right?
But we're already seeing AI mucking up something. So for instance, in the recruitment space, okay, you're seeing all of these applicant tracker tools and applicant assessment tools, things like that. Well, what's actually happening is the really good, genuine CVs aren't getting through because they aren't necessarily hitting the exact things that have been set as to what needs to get through. But the people who have taken time to have their CV optimized by AI sailing right through, guess what? They're not getting hired either because when it gets to interview, they can't prove themselves. But then good people are not getting to the interviews. So if that's what it's doing and it's been shown to do in the recruitment space, why on earth would I want to use it for Rams?
Yeah. So overall, you are optimistic about it, but you are conservative in terms of its usage right
I
now.
wouldn't go that far. What I would say is that we need to walk into this with open eyes. We are at a stage where it's incredibly useful. It can make things so much more efficient. It can save you huge amounts of time. Not necessarily because something else is more important, but because you've got too many important things on your desk.
Yeah.
And it can help you make more efficient use of your time. That's great. It can sit in the background and alert you to risks through video surveillance, through, as I said, analyzing voice samples, things like that. But sure, you can use it to write a website, but how good would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just would like to say thanks for people that joined us today. We have a few questions. We have time still, but we have people joining us from Bangladesh, from India, from the Emirates, from many places, Rosie. So that's because one, this topic is so interesting, but most importantly, that's because you're here talking openly about that. And thank you very much again. So as I said, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel so you'll never miss an episode, there's a QR code here on your screen so you can subscribe to the channel. Next week, we are going to be back with Dr. Mathilde D'Amelio, and the topic is AI hacks for EHS professionals. She's a PhD and she's specialized in AI, delivering training for organizations like Google, Microsoft, and I just attended a course with her, a digital transformation program from Imperial Business School, and she accepted my invitation, and she will be here talking about what are the useful hacks that we can implement straight away.
That's incredible. I clearly need to sign up for this one.
It will be a pleasure, Rosie. So, as we said before, this generation of safety and risk professionals feel somehow stuck. Everything is so new. They know that AI and safety tech is like a game changer. They were never trained for that. So what are the skills that you think, Rosie, that we should be prioritizing right now to learn? If I say, well, learn how to do AI, how to use AI, it's very vague, right? So How would you frame this for someone who's watching us that wants to know more but is a bit hesitant about where to get started?
I think I'd probably go back 25 years to answer that question.
Oh,
To start with, I entered the profession before Eric Holnagel published Safety 2.0 and Sidney Dekker published Safety Differently. Okay, so human factors were not something I was trained on. So I engaged my curiosity and I spent time outside of work teaching myself. I went out there, I found authoritative sources on the subject and I read. And then I practiced it. And when it comes to AI, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm reading articles. I'm attending podcasts. And I can assure you, I'll be there next week because I want to hear from an expert. I'm attempting to use the technology, that kind of pragmatic learning, that kind of hands-on, saying, okay, I've got a case here where I think it might be useful. But I'm also attending conferences and listening to other people speak. This is so new. We need to take in as much data as possible.
fantastic. So one question here from Ibrahim from Tunisia. Can you pick that one, Rosie?
I've just read that one on the screen. Thank you. Ibrahim, I think you're absolutely right that there are different ways for us to get good at this. And I think if you have an opportunity to co-design, absolutely. So one of the opportunities that I'm looking at is how AI might improve how people interact with our electronic safety management system. This is in my day job. Because we could use AI to assess what people are putting into different fields. Oh, it appears you've mentioned somebody's name in an accident report. You should refer to them as the injured person. Oh, this doesn't seem to have very much detail. Could you elaborate? Well, that's a real opportunity where I might get involved in designing an AI engine. Equally, I've got a wealth of data at my fingertips. With the right help, I could design something that will help me with the analysis there. So, yeah, we learn by doing. So the point I made about understanding the theory and understanding what people are thinking about it, that's one thing. But within the bounds of safety, have a go. It's the only way we'll learn.
I love this answer, Rosie. And Ibrahim, we are connected on LinkedIn, and thanks for that. And I love to see people from all over the world connecting with us.
Mm-hmm. And if I can just say off topic for a moment, Ibrahim, Kerkena is a beautiful island.
Amazing. So thanks, Kadar, for joining us as well. And Kadar says that it all depends fundamentally of the information that we put in. There is this basic rule of garbage in, garbage out. And for risk intersection, we need to be cautious. Still human intervention required to identify the risk and probability. I love to read it. So any comments on that, Rosie?
I think this is very much in line with the way I'm thinking about this. Now, there's of course a risk of groupthink here that, or perhaps an echo chamber that we're saying much the same thing. And perhaps we need someone to come in and challenge us and say, oh no, AI is dangerous, or no, we're not using AI well enough. But I think you're right on the money there.
Absolutely. So, Rosie, we still have a few minutes. If you want, if you're watching us, if you want to ask a question, please type the question on LinkedIn, and if we can, we're going to answer that. But before we go, Rosie, I would like to say a big thank you. I really loved this conversation. I learned a lot with your way of saying things. I was talking with a friend the other day, and I mentioned about this talk, and then he said, well, she will either be totally risk adverse and she will say, don't use it, or she will have a very interesting approach to the matter. And I guess people will be surprised that you are supportive, provided that we put boundaries in place and we still have human in the loop. And before we go and you make your final considerations, I just would like to have a very quick rapid fire with you. So I'll ask you a question, and then you answer from the bottom of your heart in one sentence or less. Are you ready?
Indeed.
Let's go. The biggest myth in risk management.
That you can achieve what you need to do from your desk.
Wow. One leader you admire and why?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say Louise Hosking. She is an ex-president of IOSH. She was the chief exec of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, and she is currently the head of health and safety for the Scouts. She's an incredible woman.
Very interesting, very good. What keeps you hopeful about the future of risk management and safety?
That compliance works, but we're curious enough to go beyond that.
Amazing. So that one is either yes or no. AI in risk management, yes or
Yes.
no?
Oh,
Great,
yes.
great. I love that. I love that. So, well, overall, this wasn't just another conversation about risk. It was about courage, to embrace the new, to be open for a new way of thinking, and to be willing to learn. I deeply enjoyed this conversation, Rosie, and it's been great to get to know your point of view in many things. And I love the fact that you brought the Rosie behind the title to this conversation. And as I said, for everyone, Rosie is very approachable. So if you want to connect with Rosie on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure that she will be really supportive, and she will respond to your message as she did to me. Rosie, so this was the episode about risk and tech intersection. So thank you very much for being available today. Again, this is the web address of the International Institute of Risk Management, so you can know more about it. So Rosie, please, your final considerations before we go.
Well, I think it's probably very relevant to tech, which largely will tie you to that desk. Because I've already said it's one of the biggest myths, as far as I'm concerned, is that you can do what you need to do from a desk. So I'm going to leave the final words to the author John le Carre, whose books I really do enjoy. And he said that a desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world.
Wow, that's profound.
And I have to say, I have been looking for more than 20 years for a quote that's more relevant to risk management, and I haven't found one. So thank you to John le Carre. He is, that quote inspires me.
It really did inspire me as well, Rosie, and thanks for sharing. So before we go, I am launching in a few weeks the world's first Safety 4.0 training, which will be IOSH approved and CPD certified. This is me putting all things I know about this subject to help you adapt, and most importantly, to help you thrive in times of rapid transformation. The IIRSM also have a range of courses available in their website, which quality is outstanding. So do not forget to take a look as well. So if you're interested in this training that I just mentioned to you, just scan the QR codes. And Rosie, have a lovely evening. I hope you have more opportunities to chat. And, thank you very much, everyone. for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And don't forget, next week, Dr. Matilde D'Amelio talking about AI hacks for EHS professionals. So thank you very much, and see you next time.